One of the best ways for a television series to draw in viewers is by being controversial, but there have been several moments over the course of TV history where shows have taken things too far. Join Facts First as we explore controversial TV episodes banned from TV. Hawaii Five-0, bored, she hung herself. Hawaii Five-0 was never a show that prided itself on risque subject matter. In fact, it was generally considered appropriate for family viewing. That's probably part of the reason why this episode ended up being so controversial. The episode is called Bored, She Hung Herself, the 16th episode of the show's second season. Based on the name of the episode, one might expect it to be about someone committing suicide, but it was actually about autoerotic asphyxiation. In the episode, a woman accidentally kills herself while trying to perform autoerotic asphyxiation. It's an act wherein a person reduces oxygen to the brain while achieving orgasm through masturbation. The reduced oxygen is supposed to make the orgasm more intense. The concept of a woman accidentally dying while doing it was clever, but the episode was sadly received negatively upon its initial airing. After being taken off the air, Bored, She Hung Herself has yet to be shown on television again, but it was released via Hawaii Five-0's DVD box sets. Beavis and Butthead, comedians. Beavis and Butthead was a show that wore its controversial nature on its sleeve. This was all well and good for the animated comedy until one tragic event in the fall of 1993, when a young child attempted to imitate the cartoon's titular characters in a fatal way. The episode that the child was attempting to imitate was called Comedians. In the episode, Beavis and Butthead show up at a comedy club and try to win over the audience's favor by performing a juggling act with flaming balls of newspaper, but they end up burning the comedy club down. When it aired, a 5-year-old boy at home believed he could do a better job of juggling flaming balls of newspaper than Beavis and Butthead. Sadly, he was mistaken. The boy burned his entire trailer down, which resulted in the death of his 2-year-old sister. The incident occurred in Ohio and had a pretty big impact. The Beavis and Butthead episode was removed from the air, and the show as a whole was moved to a later time slot on MTV. Pokémon, Electric Soldier Porygon. Most people have likely heard the myth that watching Japanese animation, or anime, can cause seizures. But did you know it's actually based on fact? The origin is a 1997 episode of the global phenomenon Pokémon. In the episode, which is called Electric Soldier Porygon, a sequence of flashing lights is seen that resulted in nearly 700 children being hospitalized from seizures. The episode was never aired again, and the series as a whole took a 4-month-long hiatus. South Park, 200 and 201. There's something about the medium of animation that lends itself to controversy. South Park has had no shortage of controversial episodes since it first began airing on Comedy Central in 1997. But there have been few South Park moments quite as controversial as the world's response to the show's 200th and 201st episodes. Creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone wanted to do something big for the series' 200th episode, and they certainly did. The idea they came up with was to depict the Prophet Muhammad. For those who don't know, Muslims generally don't take very well to the Prophet being depicted in the media. The South Park creators knew this, and they were hoping that their depiction of Muhammad would stir up all the controversy that the show's episodes would need to make their mark. The episodes certainly were controversial, though they were arguably more controversial than the creators intended. The episodes were banned in Sri Lanka and resulted in Trey and Matt receiving death threats. Eventually, Comedy Central decided not to air the pair of episodes ever again. Cow and Chicken, Buffalo Gals. Cow and Chicken is another animated series that stirred up quite a bit of controversy. Despite being aimed at children, Cow and Chicken loved pushing the boundaries when it came to innuendo. The series took things a little too far during the 7th episode of its second season, dubbed Buffalo Gals. The episode revolved around a female biker gang, wherein the members were oh so subtly showcased to be lesbians. Some of the giveaways included the fact that the gang breaks into the house of the show's titular characters to, quote, munch on their carpet, as well as some dialogue involving the members of the gang talking about who is going to pitch or catch. The X-Files, Home. The X-Files was a sci-fi series that loved scaring television audiences. In one season 4 episode, the show took its typically shocking effect a little too far with an episode that featured such themes as incest and the murder of an infant. The episode was dubbed Home, and it proved a little too dark for TV audiences in 1996. It never aired again over the course of the original run. But it has since rerun in syndication and is included on the DVD box set for the show's corresponding season. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Earshot. There have been multiple instances where shows didn't intend to be controversial, but caused controversy by mere coincidence due to real-life tragedies. One such instance occurred during the 3rd season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. In the episode Earshot, Buffy gains the ability to read other people's minds. One of the minds she reads while attending class ends up being a potential school shooter. Thankfully, Buffy manages to convince him to put the gun down just in time. As the legend goes, the Columbine High School massacre occurred the same week the episode was supposed to air. As a result, the premiere was delayed. The Amanda Show, episode 29. Another seemingly innocent episode of a TV series that unintentionally stirred up controversy due to a real-life tragedy was the 29th episode of the Nickelodeon sketch comedy series The Amanda Show. The episode featured a sketch where a meteor crashes into the home of an unlucky family. The episode premiered in March of 2001. Several months later, 9/11 occurred. After 9/11, TV audiences no longer felt that a large object crashing into a building was something to laugh about. As a result, the episode was taken off the air for good. Seinfeld, the Puerto Rican Day. The Puerto Rican Day was one of the final episodes of Seinfeld's last season. It's gone down in history for 2 things. For one, it remains the 2nd highest performing episode in the ratings of the show's entire run. For another, it ended up becoming the most controversial episode. Seinfeld was never a show that sought out controversy, but it found it due to the Puerto Rican Day. The episode featured the character of Kramer accidentally setting fire to a Puerto Rican flag. Understandably, Puerto Ricans were pissed. The Twilight Zone, The Encounter. The Twilight Zone is another classic series that audiences may be surprised to learn had an episode taken off the air from controversy. This happened in 1964, and it was the 151st episode. The episode, called Encounter, features George Takei as a Japanese-American man who finds himself locked in the attic with a World War II veteran. Unsurprisingly, racial tension unfolds. The racial tension was on purpose, but not received well by audiences. Given that America had recently become involved in the Vietnam War, viewers weren't interested in being reminded of racial tensions. Sesame Street, Snuffy's parents get a divorce. While Sesame Street has never aimed to be controversial, it's always aimed to tackle mature subjects that other kids' shows might not. One of the times Sesame Street has accidentally stirred up controversy, though, was as a result of the 1992 episode Snuffy's Parents Get a Divorce. The creators thought the episode might help children whose parents have gone through divorces in real life, but it proved so controversial it didn't make it to air. Dance Moms, Topless Showgirls. Dance Moms was a reality TV series on Lifetime, and it stirred up controversy in a pretty shocking way. As you can infer from the show's name, the series revolved around the mothers of children in the competitive dance scene. One episode featured the children dancing in outfits meant to look as if they were dancing naked. Understandably, TV audiences hated this. The episode not only never aired again, it remains unavailable. Now it's time to hear from you. Did you ever see any of these episodes? Let us know in the comments section below.